Hi there. So we're going to do a quick tour, a walkthrough of Photoshop. This is also something that we went over in class, but I thought and you told me that it would be helpful to have a recording of it. So here we go. This is Photoshop when you open up Photoshop on your screen. So you can see here, what we have up here, this is called the menu bar. So you might hear me say go to the filter menu or the layer menu. Within each of these they have, this is very familiar to you for most other software programs. If there's a little arrow to the side, that means that there's more information to see and access. So that is the menu. This is called the options menu, and this changes depending on the tool that you select. So we've got all these different tools, and you can see how it changes based on what I'm doing. So if I'm doing the paintbrush, it's going to ask me about paintbrush size and hardness. If I'm doing text, I have my text options here, or basic text options. That leads me to the toolbar over here. Now we can pull this out, and you can make this one column or two column, depending on how much space you have on your screen. When you hover over any of the tools, just stay there for a second and it will tell you what any of the tools are. This is the eyedropper tool, for example. This is the crop tool. And you will see this little triangle in the corner, and that will also, if you hold down on it, so if you just click it, it will, again, you can see up here in the options menu it's changing. But if I hold down on the arrow, you have other options within that. So in the brush tool, I have the pencil tool, a color replacement tool, and a mixer brush tool, for example. You go to the text tool, you have your regular horizontal text. You also select to type vertically. You can do masking. We're not going to get much into masking, but that's a word that you'll hear often. Maybe I'll do another mini tutorial you can watch on your own about masking. Shapes, here you can select different shapes. Just make sure you hold down the button to get the different options. Okay. Then this is the main document window. And then what your actual image, so let me open up an image. I'm going to open up this PSD file. PSD is Photoshop document. So any PSD file will be your Photoshop file. This is my canvas now. So this is a document we're going to be recreating in another tutorial. But I wanted to show you, so this is your canvas. Over here you have your different panels. So you have, for example, here we've got swatches, oops, that's not colors. You can choose to see other, if you go over here to the window menu, you can choose if you want to see character, for example, so that adds a character panel with more details about character, paragraph panel. You can make these smaller, so now that's over here. Same thing if you hover over it. But if you're ever missing something, you're not sure where your layers panel is, go check Windows, the window panel, and see what's checked, what's not checked. Over here, so one thing that you'll hear often is layers, and you'll hear me, I'm kind of fanatical about layers. And layers is really like a digital stack. It's almost as it, so they're one on top of each other, and it's a way to organize your content. So here I have logos, and I have all the logo images in here. Now that's on top, you can see. Then we have the text boxes. So in each box, here's a different text box here. Then I put the box behind here. I'll show you when we start this one from scratch how how it's best to label these. Otherwise, it will just do a generic label. And then we have the image, and I've applied a effect to that. So layers, I said it's like a digital stack. So we have the image on the bottom, then we have your text boxes, and then we have the URLs. If I was to move the URLs below the image, like now we can't see them anymore because it needs to be, again, this is your bottom, the background is the very bottom, then think again of layers of your document. or your image or your image file. So I told you about the different tools here. These are also, you can barely see, but if you look on your own screen, there's subtle lines here, and there are different selection groups. So this is the selection, color, cropping. Here is painting and retouching. This is, what is this one? This is all text and selection. Text in the kind of vector graphics, and these are information tools. So it's information about the color, it's information about how you can use the hand tool to move things around, and you can zoom in. You can see up here that you also have your I don't know why it's not working. I want to zoom back out. Also, to zoom in and out, if you're on a PC, you can do Control. Actually, I need to look at my map. It's Control minus sign or Control plus sign to make it bigger or smaller. Okay, so let's quickly go to things like, let's look at just a few things. Let me look at the paint tool, for example. So you can see here, I've got my brush tool. The options panel changed. And basically, I want to actually paint, you want to select what you want to paint on top of. So I've got, this is quite small. Let me make this a little bigger. Now you can see how it adjusts. Now this is really big, like ginormous. So it's 5,000 pixels. Let's say I want to paint something about that big. The color here is going to tell you what color, so it's going to paint in red. So let's say, okay, that's fine, but I don't want the paintbrush, I don't want the spray paint, I want it to be like more fine, so I can change the hardness for my brushes as well. And then I can color that in if I want. You can also go up here to the history panel and you can delete. You can go back to the different things that you've done and you can delete. That's these things. If you don't see history, again, go to window and make sure that history is selected. And then you can see here. But that is, I have that, and you should too have it as one of your defaults. I also want to show you another thing that's pretty powerful in Photoshop are filters. So you want to filter on an image. You have to have an image selected, or a layer that has something in it, not just that. You want to select, and then you have different filters. So if you want to see all the filters, they have this filter gallery. They've got all sorts of crazy stuff. Some that might not seem like a good idea, but others that you might find are somewhat potentially interesting. And you can play with each filter. You can play around with. They each have different. So I can change the brush size here. I can change the brush detail. This is kind of subtle. I can change the texture. Now she's kind of getting a little funky. I can cancel out of it, which I think would be a good idea at this point. They also have things like adjustment layers. So let me take off, I did this filter. So if I want to change, then you go into, actually let's do it down here. There's a lot of, that's one thing about Photoshop is that you can do things from a lot of different places. So I can have a new adjustment layer here. Almost everything you want to do is going to be up here in the menu. But you can also go down here, and again, if you've got all these different, you can create a new group and a new layer. Again, I'll show you how to do that later. But if we want a new adjustment layer on this image, I add that, and let's say I want to change the saturation. So now you can see here it's added this adjustment layer. It says hue saturation, and I can make this like really red. Like, see how I'm changing it's adding a lot of, it added a lot of, so there we go, green, and then this is actually like a little more turquoise because of what, so you can change the hue, you can change the saturation. These are things you might have done on Instagram at some point. You can change the lightness. That's just one kind of adjustment you can do. I'm going to delete that. So I'm going to delete that by taking this layer and moving it to the trash can. But again, there's all sorts of different black and white color balance. I would just encourage you to really play around with it. I tend to use levels a lot, and that just kind of helps me find a little bit of balance. But, you know, like all of this, you're going to learn by playing around and seeing what you like and what you don't like and what works for you. So that wasn't that great of an idea with those layers, so I'm going to take that out. This is a pretty well balanced picture. There's other things I'll get into later, like, but for now this gives you an overview. So just to remind you, we've got menus, option bar, tools, panels, layers, all sorts of effects. I can do, if I want to go to text box here, I can do, let's say I want to do a drop shadow. You know, it's going to be hard to see because it's on black. Actually, it's not a good idea. We can do all sorts of other, you can make a stroke, and I could outline it, just outlined it in black, but if I want to change the color of the stroke to red, let's say, or that's more of a fuchsia, and make it a little thicker. So everything you do has, you can see the power, how powerful. So you do stroke and you can change the size and the position and the fill color. Again, I got that here at the bottom in the layer style, which is another thing you can do up here. You can add a layer style to whatever layer you have selected. So that is Photoshop in a nutshell. And the next video will actually go about recreating this poster together. All right, there you have it.